Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're delving through the profile of Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana. We're going to take a look at his height and weight, his production profile, his injury history, his offensive situation in terms of his supporting cast, his quarterback play in general at Indiana, talk about his play against ranked competition, some advanced stats, take a look at some All-22 while I discuss some of his strengths and potential areas of improvement, talk about where he might go in terms of real-life draft capital, what we might expect from him in fantasy. So watch to the end of this video and you should have a pretty good idea about Omar Cooper Jr. Now, talking about his height and weight, both PFF and NFL Draft Buzz have him listed at 6 feet tall, which would be 36th percentile among collegiate wide receiver prospects. A perfectly reasonable height. We see tons of 6 feet wide receivers. Now, there's a slight discrepancy in terms of PFF has him at 204 pounds versus NFL Draft Buzz has him at 201 pounds. That's an insignificant difference and both are perfectly acceptable. If 201 pounds ends up being true, that would be 49th percentile among collegiate wide receiver prospects. I think 204 pounds would be around 50th percentile. Regardless, an insignificant difference, and he is plenty built enough for us to not really be too worried about his size at the next level. Now, he's projected to run a 4.49 40-yard dash time, which would be 55th percentile per NFL Draft Buzz. We'll see about that. I don't think he has the best deep speed. I think it's average, but I think he does have really nice acceleration at points. I'll kind of get into his acceleration when we talk about his strengths and potential areas of improvement later when we're taking a look at the All-22 film. But overall, height and weight are not going to be an issue, and I don't think speed and acceleration will be either. Now, moving on to his production profile, you will see only 3 years of production in terms of his receiving, but he did see 6 total snaps as a true freshman. He did redshirt, so he is a redshirt junior or fourth-year player technically. So as you can see, didn't really do anything in his first season, but jumping on to 2023 in his first season of actually producing, had 32 targets, 18 receptions, 267 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Nothing on the ground. Not a particularly dominant second season or first season actually starting, but did step it up significantly from year 1 to year 2 in terms of actually playing in 2024, jumping up to 48 targets, 28 receptions, 594 receiving yards, which on 48 targets is respectable, and a 21.2 yards per reception, very, very up there. 7 receiving touchdowns, which is nice as well. And then we did see a little bit from him on the ground, 2 carries for 23 yards and a touchdown. But he really broke out this past season, at least comparatively. 75 targets, 58 receptions, 804 receiving yards, which is easily a career high. At a respectable 13.9 yards per reception, considering his usage. 11 receiving touchdowns, which is great. Career best 85.9 PFF receiving grade, while also having 3 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Along with an 86.8 PFF rush grade. I want to say this guy was not utilized nearly enough on the ground. I'll talk about how I think he can be used at the next level once again when we talk about his strengths and potential areas of improvement. But he did not see enough carries. He is very dangerous with the ball in his hands, and the touchdowns were no fluke this season either. He has fantastic hands. Now, moving on to his injury history. Now, as far as his collegiate injury history is concerned, there's basically nothing. He had a right leg/ankle injury against Ohio State, but he was declared full go for January 1st afterwards against Alabama. So basically nothing. But to be fair, he did tear his ACL in his junior season of high school. I suspect that's possibly what got him off to a slow start. Obviously, there's so much that goes into it. Besides the physical aspect of can you actually make the cuts? Is your knee stable, right? It's even more so sometimes a mental thing with can you trust yourself? So I think there is some potential as to why he got off to a slow start that maybe won't be there for some other guys who got off to slow starts. And a very important injury, but in today's day and age, it's definitely not a career ender or anything like that. We see guys get back to full strength and look fantastic after ACL tears. But I do think that potentially could have caused a little bit of a slow start for him in his collegiate career. Moving on to his quarterback play and situation in general, in terms of the passing offense as a whole, their 83.4 score was graded his 15th best per PFF. So that's the total passing offensive situation. Obviously, he was connected to Fernando Mendoza, who's supposed to go first overall. If you watched my how good is Mendoza compared to some of the other quarterbacks that have gone first overall, I think he's a great prospect and somebody that I would really like to draft if I had the first overall pick. So yeah, the offensive environment was a big plus for him. So that is something to take into account. Now, moving on to how did he play against ranked competition? Guys you might actually see at the next level. Some players like, for instance, Carnell Tate was basically erased in any game he played against ranked competition, but he dominated against a bunch of unranked teams with generally lesser talent on them, right? Well, taking a look at how he played this season against number 9 at the time, Illinois, in a dominant win, had 6 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. Moving on to number 3, Oregon, 7 receptions for 58 yards, no touchdown there, loss of 4 on the ground. Against number 9, Alabama, 3 for 45 and a touchdown. Against number 5, Oregon in a rematch, 3 for 17 and a touchdown. And then in the championship against number 10, Miami, in a win, 5 for 71 and no touchdown. Really, no completely dominant showings, I'd say. Generally does score touchdowns against ranked competition, so I do like to see that. A couple of solid production games. Generally wasn't erased. I'd say his worst game arguably is his 3 for 17 and a touchdown game against number 5 Oregon in a rematch. Honestly, his production against ranked competition is better than Carnell Tate's, so hard to really ding him too much for that. But definitely not as dominant as some of these other prospects like, Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon. Both of those guys dominated against ranked competition consistently, and their best games were against those teams too. So not necessarily a green flag or a red flag. I'd say no flag at all. I'm satisfied with the production, considering I think he's not going to be taken, at the top end of the first round like some of these other guys might. But definitely solid production nonetheless. Now, taking a look at some advanced stats, I took a look at FBS wide receivers with 50 or more targets. It was a sample size of over 200 players here. Cooper Jr. ran 356 routes, which is 94.4% of the team routes. He was a starting wide receiver for the Hoosiers. Taking a look at his deployment, he played 83.3% of the time from the slot and 16% out wide, with a little bit of backfield usage and inline usage. Generally going to be best used, in my opinion, as a slot, but I do think he can see some work as a Z at the next level. I think you could probably play him at X, but I don't think that would be the best deployment of him. I think Indiana deployed him reasonably well in ways in which benefited him. Looking at his yards per out run, his 2.68 was tied for 24th in the sample size. His PFF receiving grade of 85.9 was 8th. His yak perception of 7.1 was tied for 28th, but 24 missed tackles forced is 5th. He is a deadly yak guy. That is, in my opinion, his best trait. With the ball in his hands, he will make multiple people miss. He can stiff arm you, truck you, make a nasty jump cut, spin move you. It doesn't matter. He can do everything with the ball in his hands. His contested catch percentage is reasonably good as well. I wouldn't say he has the best frame. I don't think he's not excessively tall. I don't think he has really long arms, but when he do get it within his catch radius, he does come down with it relatively well. He had a 58.3% contested catch percentage, 7 out of 12 caught. That is above the 50% threshold we typically like to see with our guys, especially if they're going to be used in the slot, where you're going to see more impact hits from linebackers and the like. Taking a look at his targets and targets per game, he had 75 on the season at 6.3 per game. Solid for what, in my opinion, was the number 2 in the offense. 58 receptions at 4.8 per game. Reasonably efficient with the targets in which he was given. That is something I like to see, efficiency. 804 yards and 67 per game is solid. Some of the best guys in this class are at about 79 per game, so about 12 yards per game less generally. And 11 total touchdowns at 0.9 per game. He has a good touchdown score, has, really good yak ability, good hands. He can make nice one-handed grabs, both hands. It doesn't matter. He's going to catch the ball. And those 11 touchdowns are no fluke. Now, an interesting tidbit I found on X. So rounds 1 through 3 wide receivers since 2020 with a career yards per out run of greater than 2.4 and a best season QB rating when targeted of 140 or greater. The list includes Trey Harris, Malik Neighbors, JSN, JMO, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and T. Higgins. Obviously, when we take a look at this list, Trey Harris, we're not really sure at this point what he's going to be. kind of crowded wide receiver room this past season. We, with Keenan Allen there, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, even Aronde Gadsden. He was a second round pick. I wasn't as high on him as some other people were, because if you looked at just the advanced stats, he was insane. But there's still plenty of time for him to prove himself. Obviously, a bunch of really good players. Treylon Burks is also a bit of a bust. I think his was a lot more due to injury and him not being used as a big slot like I think would have been best for him. I think the injuries kind of stunted his development as well. He started to show out a little bit as a rookie, but besides that, the list is pretty good. You got a wide receiver 2, and like Devontae Smith, for instance. But I mean, you got some dominant wide receiver 1s on the list, like Neighbors, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Jay Jettas, and guys who could be number 1s, but are technically wide receiver 2s, like T. Higgins. So to continue what he said, a bust Burks and a to be determined Harris, I agree. But a lot of big hits. He does mention that several busts like Kadarius Toney, Jalen Hyatt just missed this list. So a little bit more of a low end sample size there if you include those guys who just barely missed the list. But a mixture, once again, of elite wide receiver 1s as well. He says, additionally, some of the guys here, Lamb, Chase, Smith, etc., clear the thresholds by a lot and thus aren't reasonable statistical comps for Cooper. That said, production, yards per run, and efficiency pass rating when targeted is a powerful combo that not a lot of receivers in this class have outside of the top 3. So that while there are some concerning players listed there are a lot of high-end wide receivers in that list. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, The Don, and Any Buckeye. Thank you guys. I'm doing this full time now, and without your support, this would not be possible. If you'd like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in both the comment section and description of this video. You'll receive not only, but including access to a Discord where we have a channel where we have NFL and college football talk, as well as a channel where we have fantasy football talk, and a third channel where we laugh at poor trade offers that we've been offered in fantasy football. But if you'd like to, you can always DM me with private, questions if you don't wish for it to be known by any community members. But you'll also get help with building your fantasy football teams every year. I'll use wins above replacement, as well as just looking at the general lineup and scoring settings to help you with your teams each year. I'll help you with trades that are advantageous based on those factors as well. You'll be part of a fun and growing active community. You'll not only receive access to videos early guaranteed, but you'll also have the ability to ask for personal videos that you and only you can view. Or potentially, if you'd like something to be shown on the channel, you'll have preferential treatment there as well. So please consider becoming a member. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. While some All-22 clips display some of what I'm going to be mentioning here, I'm going to read you a brief around 3 to 5 minute synopsis of Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper Jr. is a redshirt junior out of Indiana who profiles to have the potential for Z and slot work at the next level, in my opinion, but I think his best work comes from the slot. He stands at 6 feet and 204 pounds, right in line with the Chase and Neighbors of the world as far as size is concerned, albeit they're very different players as wide receivers. As far as his speed and burst are concerned, he has average deep speed. I'd say he could definitely, he can be a vertical threat at the next level, but he's not going to be a burner like Jameson Williams, for instance. But his burst is interesting. So, he gets off the line very well with good acceleration. He can beat press sometimes from the outside. I like him with a free release, and he's very fast off the line. But once he makes a lateral break while cutting, say he's running a dig, for instance, he doesn't seem to have that same burst, off the cut. But then, once the ball's in his actual hands, it looks great, and he can pull away from defenders in short bursts. So I'm not sure if it's a confidence issue. I do see some wasted movement at times, so that is one thing to note. Moving on to his route running ability, I don't see much of a route tree. He ran a lot of shallow crosses, speed outs, an occasional post, slot fade, and some deep crosses as well. All mostly from the slot, but did see some success on the outside, like I previously mentioned, but a lot of those were speed outs. He shows wasted movement at times that keeps him from separating traditionally on some of those end breaking routes, specifically on digs. But as far as his hands are concerned, he has no issues there and shows not only sure-handedness with both hands, but he can also snag one-handers with ease. There's a nasty catch he made this season in contested traffic where he went up with one hand, grabbed it, uh, broke like 2 tackles and got some additional yardage. It was crazy, man. Um, and speaking of which, his best trait, in my opinion, is his yak ability, where he can bulldoze you, stiff arm you, make a nasty jump cut or spin move out of multiple tackles in an individual play. And also showcases, like I mentioned previously, some awesome burst after the catch and in the open field. I think that's, once again, by far his strongest trait. He also tracks the ball well, though, down the field and has a nice vertical to leap up and go up and get it. As far as what I think of him in totality, I think he'd be a fantastic number 2 in an NFL offense, as he has the yak ability to be dangerous with the creative offensive coordinator that, potentially puts him in motion a lot to create both matchup advantages and allow him to get a head start off the line of scrimmage, as well as potentially gets him involved in the ground game. This guy is, back in the day, he might not have gotten some of the hype and draft capital due to being viewed by a substantial amount of people as kind of your slot only type. But in traditional NFL offenses, guys with his kind of skill set are becoming more and more valuable. Like I said, I think he'd be a fantastic number 2. Put him in motion a lot, get the ball in his hands in open field, see what he does. He's going to make so many people miss and look stupid, or he'll truck you. So very talented player. Now, moving on to his projected draft capital, per NFL Draft Buzz, he's supposed to be in that late first to early second range. I've seen some mocks where he is a first and some mocks where he's a second rounder. Who knows at this point? I think late first, early second would be fantastic draft capital for him, and I think it's reasonable as well. Once again, a brief summarization of his strengths and potential areas to improve upon. I think he has fantastic yak ability. I think that's the best thing about him. He can juke you, spin move you, truck you, stiff arm you. He has great ball carrier vision. And he also has very good acceleration with the ball in his hands. I think he can play Z or slot quite well. I think you could play him as an X. He can beat press, but I don't think that's going to be his calling because he's just so good with the ball in his hands. I think he'll probably be more of a motion receiver that sees a lot of Z and slot. His ball tracking is fantastic deep down the field. He has a good vertical as well to go up and go get it. The frame isn't the best, but if it gets within his radius, he's catching it pretty much every time. I didn't mention this actually yet, but run blocking, I think there was a lack of effort, if I have to be honest with you. Either that or we have serious issues there. And if we don't see improvement, I do think there's a chance he could see a little bit less of a snap percentage. But I think he can improve there. He seems plenty strong. By the way, he's able to stiff arm people off the field. So no worries. I don't think functional strength is any concern. I think his route tree could use some developing. Like I said, I saw a lot of shallow crosses, speed outs, deep crossers, nothing particularly advanced. And on some of the few dig routes that I saw, I did see some wasted movement that didn't allow him to get some of the separation. And he doesn't really accelerate out of the lateral cut as well as I would like. But I know he can accelerate well because he does so with the ball in his hands and off the line of scrimmage. So it's a little bit weird in my opinion. And I think getting some of that wasted movement coached up could definitely improve there and potentially could help that not even be an issue. And his deep speed is meh. It's average. It's definitely not his best trait, but I think he has enough to, be a deep threat here and there. And it won't be a deterrent from teams using him deep down the field, but he's not Jameson Williams. And I think he's better suited as a yak monster in the short and intermediate areas of the field because of how good his yak ability is. Moving on to my pro comparison, I think this is going to be a very common one. It's Deebo Samuel. Somebody that I don't think has the route running to really just dissect man coverage very easily. I think he's better against zone, and that's been true of Deebo Samuel. Very good with the ball in his hands, incredible juke moves, trucks, stiff arms, spin moves, just like Deebo Samuel. I think that's as good of a comp as there is, in my opinion, in this draft class. Has a lot to tighten up in terms of the route running, in my opinion. And I would like to see a little bit more, in my opinion, effort as a run blocker, but I do think Deebo Samuel's a good comparison. And if he lands in the right situation, we could potentially see some Deebo Samuel type seasons out of him, especially if we get a creative offensive coordinator like Shanahan or McVay that might use him on the ground. If he gets the draft capital and a decent enough landing spot, I could see him in the wide receiver 22 to 30 in terms of projected community dynasty ranking of him. Um, where would I take him in rookie drafts? I'd consider him maybe in the late first, potentially early second. A couple of potential team fits from an NFL perspective. The 49ers, after losing Deebo Samuel and not really having that yak guy in their offense, I think that they could potentially use him at 27. I think the Patriots at 31st could definitely consider him. Get somebody with yak ability for Drake May who's very accurate and throws a good runner's ball. That would be deadly. I think the Titans at 35th, give Cam Ward somebody that can do something after the catch. That would be fantastic. And I think the Browns potentially at 39th, if they don't go receiver early, could definitely, they could use a ton of receiver help. I think he could complement Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy more of the route runner type and third down guy, and Cooper more of the yak guy and kind of first and second down guy, potentially on the ground too. I think all these would be reasonable fits and project to be where he might be taken in terms of what we think we know, in terms of what NFL draft analysts at the very least are saying about him. Moving on to my current wide receiver rankings. Now, please understand that there's a ton of time between now and when we're going to be drafting these guys after the NFL draft. When I did a lot of these rankings, I had nothing to work on in terms of where they were actually projected to go besides what NFL Draft Buzz had for them. So I do expect some things to change. I've made a couple of changes already, and there's going to be more changes. So take it with a grain of salt. But in my personal subjective opinion, I have Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon in tier 1 by themselves. I think both of those guys can be wide receiver 1s at the next level, and I would think are more likely to be wide receiver 1s than some of the other guys that are a little bit further down. Jordan Tyson, it reminds me of a combination of Stephon Diggs and Jerry Jeudy. A quick separator. I think he has all of what you need to be a wide receiver 1. He just has to stay healthy. Mekhi Lemon, a slot demon who I do think can see some Z work as well. I don't think he'll be an X, but really good yak skills accompany him to a less bursty Luther Burden, and I love Luther Burden. Incredible yak ability. Now, a lot of people seem to have Carnell Tate as the wide receiver 1 of this class or in the same tier. I personally disagree. I don't think he has the athleticism that I really like to see in some of these guys. He doesn't really have any yak ability. I think he has a really safe floor. I'd be shocked if he's not decent to good at the next level. But I just don't see wide receiver 1 with him. I think he'd be a great number 2. He's projected to go in a lot of drafts to the Giants 5th overall. That'd be fantastic. He could be the wide receiver 2 behind Malik Neighbors, and Neighbors can get all the difficult matchups and hopefully allow Carnell Tate to take advantage of them. I think that would be a fantastic spot. Like I said, I don't think he's a number 1, but I'd be shocked if he's a bust. Omar Cooper, I have him in tier 2. You could put him in any order kind of with some of these guys. Like I said, comped him to Deebo Samuel. Chris Brazzell, somebody I'm really high on. I think he's a lot like Mike Evans, but he has better deep speed. He's 6'5", projected to run in the 4.3s, but I don't think he's like Dante Thornton. I know a lot of guys talk about, Tennessee wide receivers, they helmet scout, they talk about the splits. They didn't use those splits as much this season. He ran a lot more traditional routes that you will see at the next level and was successful. I think he is wildly different than Dante Thornton. His season this year was better than Dante Thornton's entire collegiate career mushed into one. So please don't helmet scout. Denzel Boston, somebody I think is a solid player as well. Reminds me a lot of Cortland Sutton. Elijah Surratt, somebody that reminds me a lot of Jacoby Myers. Casey Concepcion, who I like, is a little bit like Jaden Reed, similar kind of like to what I think of Antonio Williams. Then we have Jacoby Lane and Jeremy Bernard in tier 3. I think those guys are going to be a little bit pushed down the board and maybe be 3rd to 5th round selections in the real draft. And then Chris Bell, somebody that I thought had a lot of talent. I think he would be more of a big slot Rashee Rice type, but he resembled a little bit more of Xavier Legette when he used out wide. He unfortunately just tore his ACL not too long ago, so I think that's going to really hurt his draft capital, and we might not see anything. So that's the reason for him being down there, not that I didn't think he was talented. If he had stayed healthy, I'd probably have him somewhere around Boston and Surratt, but I don't think we're getting anything from him this season. His draft capital could really be hurt, and there's always a chance, even if it's a lot lower nowadays, that we just don't see anything from him, and he's never able to get back to being where he was pre-injury. And so, what are your thoughts on Amari Cooper Jr.? Let me know below in the comment section. I'm curious what you think. Are there any potential areas of improvement or potential strengths I didn't even mention that you think are noteworthy? If so, let me know below. What are your rankings? You want to tier those out? Let me know below in the comment section. I'd be excited. I'd love to talk through those with you. Can never have enough talk about the NFL draft in our rankings, no matter how subjective they are. But yeah, thank you to my Patreon members. If you would be so kind and like to subscribe to my Patreon, I'm going to leave a link in the comment section. I'm doing this full time and your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you to my members. If you cannot or do not wish to, if you could just like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, I'd really appreciate it. With all this being said, thank you and have a good day.